The Craxian enforcement officers dragged the human through the station's metallic corridors, their forearms gripping him tightly. They had caught him in the lower district of Nexus 7, the massive space station that served as a trading hub for 12 different alien species. The human hadn't resisted when they arrested him for the bar fight that left 3 Vornak traders unconscious. Another drunk human, Officer Zektar muttered through his mandibles, his compound eyes reflecting the harsh station lights. They always cause trouble in the entertainment sector. The human walked calmly between them, his weathered face showing no emotion. He wore simple civilian clothes, a dark jacket, worn boots, and cargo pants. Nothing special about him except for the steady way he moved. Each step measured and precise, despite the restraints binding his wrists. "Name?" Commander Vexnor asked as they processed him at the security station. The commander's scales shifted from green to orange, showing his annoyance at having to deal with another minor incident. "Jake Thompson," the human replied quietly, his voice carrying a slight drawl. "Planet of origin? Earth. United States of America." Vexnor's tentacles tapped at the holographic console, entering the data. "Occupation?" Jake paused for a moment. "Retired." "Retired from what?" Zektar pressed, his translator crackling with impatience. "Military service." The officers exchanged glances. Many humans claimed military background to appear tough in the outer sectors. Vexnor's scales flickered dismissively. "You and every other human who gets drunk and starts fights. Take him to holding cell 7. As they marched Jake toward the detention area, none of them noticed how his eyes tracked every camera, every exit, every guard position. They didn't see the small scars on his hands or the way he automatically checked blind corners. To them, he was just another human causing problems on their station. The holding area was a circular room with energy barriers instead of bars. 5 other cells held various species: a Thraxian smuggler, 2 Gorvak thieves, and another human who appeared to be sleeping off whatever substances he had consumed. Jake was pushed into his cell, the blue energy field activating behind him. "Processing will be in 6 hours, Zektar announced. "The magistrate will decide your fine and deportation terms." Jake nodded and sat on the metal bench, his back straight, hands resting on his knees. The guards left, chattering in their native language about humans and their propensity for violence. The universal translators didn't catch everything, but Jake understood enough. Hours passed. Jake remained motionless on the bench while the other prisoners paced or complained. The Thraxian in the next cell tried to start a conversation, but Jake only gave short, polite responses. He wasn't unfriendly, just contained, like energy compressed into a small space. The station's lights dimmed to simulate night cycle. Most of the prisoners settled down to sleep. Jake's eyes remained open, watching, waiting. He had learned long ago that trouble rarely announced itself. The explosion came exactly at 0300 station time. The floor shook violently, throwing the sleeping prisoners against the walls of their cells. Emergency alarms blared as red lights bathed everything in crimson. Jake was already on his feet, balanced and ready, while the others scrambled in confusion. "What's happening?" the Thraxian shrieked, his 6 legs skittering nervously. Jake moved to the energy barrier, studying the chaos outside. Security officers ran past, shouting orders. The universal translators picked up fragments. "Boarding party. Pirates. Section 12. Another explosion. Closer this time." The lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the energy barriers wavered. Most prisoners didn't notice, too panicked to pay attention. But Jake saw it. He also saw something else. The security officers weren't running toward the threat. They were running away from it. Through the transparent aluminum window, Jake could see the main corridor. Figures in mismatched armor moved with military precision, cutting down station security with plasma weapons. These weren't ordinary pirates. Their movements were too coordinated, their tactics too refined. "Korthak's raiders," Jake said quietly. The other human prisoner, now fully awake, pressed against his cell barrier. "You know about them?" "Heard stories. They hit frontier stations, take slaves and valuable cargo, don't usually leave witnesses." The Thraxian's color drained from his exoskeleton. The station security. They can't stop Korthak's raiders. We're all dead. Jake continued watching the corridor. The raiders were methodical, checking each room, gathering prisoners and station personnel. They would reach the holding area within minutes. Listen carefully, Jake said, his voice carrying a command that made even the panicking aliens stop and pay attention. When they get here, don't resist. Don't make eye contact. Keep your heads down and do exactly what they say. They want slaves, not corpses. How do you know? The Gorvak thief asked. Because I've seen their work before. Jake's expression hardened. Everyone get to the back of your cells. Now. Something in his tone made them obey without question. Even through their fear, they recognized the voice of someone who had faced death before and walked away. The main door to the holding area exploded inward. 6 Korthak's raiders entered, their armor scarred from countless battles. Their species was reptilian, standing 7 feet tall with thick scales and teeth designed for tearing flesh. Each carried military-grade weapons that were illegal in most civilized systems. The lead raider, distinguished by red markings on his armor, surveyed the prisoners. His voice was a harsh rasp through the translator. Station security is neutralized. You belong to the Korthaks now. Cooperation means life. Resistance means death. He gestured to his subordinates. Disable the barriers, collar them for transport. As the energy fields dropped, Jake noticed details the others missed. The raiders' formation had gaps. Their leader favored his left side. Old injury. Probably. 2 of them kept checking their 6. Nervous about something. These weren't the elite warriors the Korthaks were known for. These were second string, sent on what should have been an easy raid. The raiders moved from cell to cell, fastening neural collars on the prisoners. The devices would deliver painful shocks to anyone who disobeyed. When they reached Jake's cell, he stepped forward slowly, hands visible, no sudden movements. The raider securing his collar paused, studying Jake's face. You're not afraid, human. Fear doesn't change the situation, Jake replied evenly. The raider laughed, a sound like grinding metal. We'll see how long that lasts. They were herded into the main corridor, joining other captured station inhabitants. Jake counted 30 prisoners total, mostly civilians, and low-level security. The raiders pushed them toward the docking bay where their ship waited. As they moved through the damaged station, Jake memorized every detail. The raiders had hit the communication array first. Smart. Then the security station, preventing any coordinated response. But they had missed the auxiliary power coupling on Deck 5. Amateur mistake. The group passed through what had been the station's market district. Bodies lay among overturned stalls and scattered goods. Jake's jaw tightened, but his expression remained neutral. He had seen worse, but that didn't make it easier. Move faster, one raider barked, shocking an elderly Altarian who had stumbled. Jake smoothly stepped forward, helping the alien regain balance. The raider raised his weapon threateningly, but Jake had already stepped back. Hands visible, non-threatening. Just a human helping another prisoner. Nothing more. They reached the docking bay where a scarred freighter waited. It had been modified with armor plating and weapon systems. Turned from a cargo hauler into a slave ship. The cargo hold yawned open like a hungry mouth. As the prisoners were forced up the ramp, Jake noticed something that made his trained mind snap to attention. Scorch marks on the hull. Recent. Carbon scoring from plasma fire. Not laser weapons. Someone had fought these raiders recently and hurt them. That explained the nervous behavior, the quick smash and grab tactics. They were running from something. Inside the cargo hold, the prisoners were separated into groups. The raiders were efficient but hurried. Jake allowed himself to be pushed into a corner with 5 other humans and a couple of Thraxians. Neural collars kept everyone docile. But Jake noticed the collars were an older model. Military training included recognition of various restraint devices. These had a known vulnerability. The ship's engines roared to life. Through the small viewport, Jake watched Nexus 7 shrink into the distance. The other prisoners wept or prayed in their various ways. Jake simply observed, cataloging the ship's layout, counting raiders, noting weapons, and defensive positions. One of the other humans, a young woman with engineering patches on her coveralls, whispered, "They're going to sell us, aren't they? To mining operations, or worse." "Probably," Jake admitted. "No point in false hope. You were military, you said. Can't you do something?" Jake met her eyes. 22 raiders, military weapons. Enclosed space with 30 civilians, including children. What would you suggest? She looked away, defeated. But Jake hadn't said it was impossible. He had just listed the challenges. In his mind, he was already working through scenarios, calculating odds, planning contingencies. The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the civilized sectors behind. They were heading into the lawless regions where anything could be bought or sold, including sentient beings. The raiders relaxed slightly, thinking they were safe. Jake closed his eyes, not to sleep but to think. They all assumed he was just another captured human, former military or not. They had no idea that Earth's United States Marine Corps had evolved into something far more dangerous in the centuries since humanity joined the galactic community. They had no idea that their drunk human had spent 30 years in special operations, most of it in the Scout Sniper program. They had no idea that they had just caged one of Earth's apex predators. The Korthax had made two critical errors. First, they assumed human military was like other species, competent but limited. They didn't know about the enhancement programs, the neural conditioning, the decades of warfare that had honed humans into something that made other predator species nervous. Second, they had taken civilians. Jake had been ready to serve his minor sentence and leave quietly. But now, there were innocent people in danger. Children in the cells, families torn apart. The rules had changed. Jake opened his eyes and began to study his fellow prisoners more carefully. The engineer might be useful. The two Thraxians were from a warrior culture. They would fight if given the chance. Among the other groups, he spotted a Nexari medic and what looked like a Gorvak tech specialist. 22 raiders, military weapons, enclosed space, 30 civilians including children, difficult odds. But Jake had faced worse. In the mountains of Kepler, 442b, he had held a position alone against 50 insurgents for 72 hours. On the frozen moon of Proxima 3, he had eliminated an entire enemy command structure with nothing but a knife and patience. The other prisoners saw a captured human accepting his fate. The raiders saw another slave for the markets. But Jake Thompson, formerly Gunnery Sergeant Thompson of the United States Colonial Marines, Scout Sniper, 3-time recipient of the Galactic Medal of Valor, was already at war. He just hadn't started shooting yet. As the ship traveled deeper into lawless space, Jake began the most important part of any operation: reconnaissance. He watched the raiders' patterns, memorized their shifts, noted who was lazy and who was alert. He tested the neural collar's responses, finding its limits without triggering alarms. The young engineer noticed him stretching in ways that seemed random but were actually testing the collar's sensor placement. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Staying limber," Jake replied. "Long flight. Don't want to cramp up." She wasn't fooled. Hope flickered in her eyes for the first time since capture. She had recognized something in Jake's movements. The careful precision of someone preparing for action. Over the next hours, Jake established a subtle communication with the other military-minded prisoners. A look here. A gesture there. The universal sign language that warriors of all species seem to understand. Get ready. Stay alert. Wait for the signal. The Korthax raiders thought they had captured helpless civilians and one drunk human veteran. They counted their future profits and argued over divisions of spoils. They never noticed the way Jake had positioned himself to observe their command structure. They never saw him counting seconds between guard changes. They never realized that every question he asked other prisoners was gathering intelligence about the ship's layout. The predator was learning. Soon, it would be time to hunt. The slave ship had been in hyperspace for 18 hours when Jake made his first move. He had studied the raiders' patrol patterns until he could predict their movements down to the second. The one they called Grax always took longer at the checkpoint near the waste recycling unit. He liked to smoke something that made his scales turn slightly purple. That would be the beginning. Jake had been slowly working on his neural collar during the rest periods. The older model had a design flaw. The connection points could be loosened by applying precise pressure at specific angles. It had taken hours of subtle movement, but he had created just enough play to matter. Thompson, the engineer whispered. She had introduced herself as Sarah Chen during one of the meal distributions. "What's your plan?" "No plan," Jake lied smoothly. "Just trying to stay comfortable." But his eyes told a different story, and Sarah was smart enough to read them. She nodded slightly and went back to her own rest position. Jake had identified 5 prisoners he could count on when the time came. Sarah was one. The 2 Thraxian brothers, Kellex and Velix, were warriors from their clan's military caste. Dr. Harrix, the Nexari medic, had served in combat zones. And surprisingly, the Gorvak tech specialist, Zix, had revealed himself to be former intelligence service. The lights dimmed for another sleep cycle. Jake waited until the prisoners settled, then began to move. Not quickly. Speed attracted attention. He shifted positions slowly, naturally, like a man trying to get comfortable on hard metal floors. Each movement brought him closer to the waste unit access panel. Grax appeared on schedule, his heavy footsteps echoing through the hold. The raider did his usual cursory check, more interested in getting to his smoking break than actually observing the prisoners. Jake counted the seconds. At exactly the moment Grax would be fumbling for his narcotic stick, Jake's fingers found the access panel's release. The panel opened silently. Jake had spent 3 hours earlier loosening it during stretching exercises. Inside was exactly what he had hoped to find. Secondary power conduits. Slave ships always had redundant systems to keep the neural collars active. But that meant accessible power, if you knew where to look. Jake pulled a thin piece of metal he had worked loose from his boot reinforcement. Military boots were designed to hide such things. A lesson learned from centuries of prisoners of war. He shaped it carefully, then inserted it into the power coupling. Not enough to trip alarms, just enough to create a feedback loop. The neural collar sparked once against his neck. Jake gritted his teeth against the pain, continuing to work. The feedback would build slowly over the next few hours. When it reached critical mass, it would create a localized EMP burst. Small, contained, but enough to disable the collars in a 5-meter radius. He closed the panel and shifted back to his sleeping position just as Grax returned from his break. The raider glanced over the prisoners with purple-tinged scales and dulled reflexes. Seeing nothing amiss, he continued his patrol. Jake settled in to wait. Patience was the sniper's greatest weapon. He had once waited motionless for 6 days, in a toxic swamp, to eliminate a terrorist leader. A few more hours was nothing. As he waited, he continued his intelligence gathering. The raiders were getting sloppy, comfortable in their success. He overheard 2 of them discussing their destination. A slave market on Terminus Station. 3 days' travel at current speed. That gave him a timeline. He also learned something more interesting. The scorch marks on the hull were from Galactic Patrol interceptors. The raiders had barely escaped their last raid, losing a third of their crew. That's why security seemed light. They were undermanned and running scared, hoping to make one last score before disappearing into the outer rim. Fear made people desperate. Desperate people made mistakes. The feedback loop built slowly in the power system. Jake felt his collar growing warm. Not enough for the raiders to notice on their scanners, but enough to know it was working. He caught Sarah's eye and tapped his collar twice. She understood and began subtly alerting the others. During the next meal distribution, Jake managed to position himself near the Thraxian brothers. As they ate the protein paste that passed for food, he spoke quietly in their language. Most humans couldn't speak Thraxian. The clicks and whistles were too complex. But Marine Scout snipers were required to learn multiple Xeno languages. When the collars fail, we have minutes before they notice, he clicked and whistled. Can you fight? Kelix's mandibles twitched in surprise at hearing fluent Thraxian from a human. We are warrior-cased. We were born to fight, but they have weapons. Leave that to me, Jake replied. Keep the other prisoners calm and ready to move. The Thraxian inclined his head slightly. Warriors recognized warriors, regardless of species. Over the next hours, Jake refined his plan. He knew the ship's layout now, thanks to careful observation and information gathered from prisoners who had been moved for various tasks. The armory was 2 decks up, guarded but not heavily. The bridge was standard freighter configuration with added weapon controls. Life support, engines, navigation, all vulnerable if you knew where to hit. But first, he needed to even the odds. The collar grew warmer. Jake could see other prisoners in the affected radius starting to notice. He caught each of their eyes, pressing a finger to his lips. Stay quiet. Stay ready. Grax came through on his next patrol. Purple-tinged and careless. He didn't notice the slight smell of ozone in the air, or the way certain prisoners were positioned differently than before. His last patrol ended at the checkpoint, where he would take another smoke break. 15 minutes of purple bliss, while prisoners plotted. Jake felt the feedback loop reaching critical mass. The collar was almost burning now, the metal conducting heat as the power systems fought themselves. He positioned himself carefully, making sure the 5 key prisoners were within the burst radius. The EMP pulse was smaller than a grenade but perfectly targeted. Neural collars within 5 meters sparked and died, their control circuits fried. Jake's collar fell away, followed by Sarah's, the Thraxians, and the others, free. But Jake didn't move immediately. Patience. Wait for the perfect moment. Grax would return in 7 minutes. The next general patrol was in 15. The bridge crew changed shifts in 20. Multiple variables. Multiple opportunities. But only one optimal moment. Jake moved to the unconscious drunk human from the holding cells. The man hadn't stirred during the entire capture. Jake checked his pulse. Drugged, not drunk. Probably a courier carrying something valuable in his system. The raiders hadn't noticed because they were focused on quick profit. Using techniques learned in field medicine training, Jake brought the man partially conscious. Listen carefully, he whispered. I'm going to get us out of here. But I need you to play dead for a while longer. Can you do that? The man's eyes focused with surprising clarity. Marine? Former. You? Naval intelligence. Deep cover. The man's voice was barely audible. They didn't get my real cargo. Interesting. Jake filed that information away and moved back to his position. Another ally, though one that needed to stay hidden for now. 3 minutes until Grax returned. Jake stood slowly, stretching like any prisoner might. The other freed prisoners did the same, following his lead. To any casual observer, nothing had changed. Just captives moving around within their designated area. Grax entered on schedule, scales purple-tinged, reflexes dulled. He made it 3 steps into the hold before Jake struck. The Marine's hand closed around the raider's throat, thumb finding the nerve cluster that every reptilian species shared. Grax went rigid, paralyzed but conscious. Jake's other hand stripped the plasma weapon before the raider could react. Kelix, Jake said calmly. The Thraxian warrior stepped forward and efficiently broke Grax's neck. No alarms, no sounds. Just quick, professional violence. Jake checked the weapon, fully charged, safety off. Sloppy. He also took Grax's security codes and communication device. The raider's body was quickly hidden behind supply crates. Listen carefully, Jake addressed the freed prisoners. We're going to take this ship. Some of you will die. That's the reality. But if we do nothing, we all end up as slaves or worse. Anyone who wants to stay here, I understand. But if you're with me, we move now. Every freed prisoner stepped forward, even the ones he hadn't counted on. The taste of freedom was powerful motivation. Jake quickly organized them. The Thraxians would come with him. He needed warriors for the initial assault. Sarah would take Zix and work on freeing the other prisoners once they secured more weapons. Dr. Herricks would prepare a triage area because there would be casualties. The armory first, Jake explained, sketching a quick map on the dusty floor. Then we split. I'll take the bridge. Kellex and Velix will secure engineering. Sarah's team frees the other prisoners and creates chaos. Questions? How do you know all this? Zix asked. The ship layout? Their routines? Because that's what scout snipers do, Jake replied. We observe. We plan. We execute. Now move. They slipped out of the cargo hold like shadows. Jake took point. The plasma rifle feeling familiar in his hands despite being alien technology. Good weapons were universal in their basic principles: point, shoot, kill. The corridor was empty as expected. The skeleton crew meant minimal patrols between shifts. Jake moved with practiced silence. Decades of training evident in every step. The Thraxians followed, impressed despite themselves. They had heard humans were capable warriors, but seeing one in action was different. They reached the armory level without incident. 2 guards, as expected. Both looking bored, playing some kind of holographic game. Jake handed the rifle to Kellex and pulled the metal shiv from his boot. Sometimes the old ways were best. He moved like smoke, using blind spots and shadow. The first guard died without knowing death had arrived. The shiv finding the gap in his armor, where helmet met chest plate. The second managed half a shout before Velix's powerful hands crushed his windpipe. Inside the armory, Jake smiled for the first time since capture. Plasma rifles, shock grenades, even a few military-grade sniper systems. The raiders had been collecting weapons from their victims. Now those weapons would be turned against them. Arm yourselves, Jake ordered, already reaching for a long-range plasma rifle. He checked the scope. Decent optics, properly zeroed. It would do. The Thraxians took assault weapons, loading up with grenades and extra power cells. They also grabbed neural collars. Jake's idea. Why kill enemies when you could collar them and use them as shields? Ready? Jake asked. Ready to follow, human. Kellex clicked. You lead. We fight. Good. You two take engineering. Disable their FTL first. We don't want them jumping to safety. Then take the life support controls. Nothing fatal. Just lower the oxygen levels to make them sluggish. And you, Jake chambered around in the sniper rifle. I'm going hunting. They split up at the main junction. Jake moved toward the bridge, but not directly. First, he needed elevation and sight lines. Every ship had maintenance shafts and emergency access points. The raiders had modified this freighter for slavery. But they couldn't change the basic structure. He found what he needed 3 decks up, an observation blister originally meant for navigation in asteroid fields. Now it gave him a perfect view of the bridge through transparent aluminum. Jake settled into position, rifle steady, and began target identification. 7 raiders on the bridge. The captain, larger than the others with ceremonial scars, sat in the command chair. 2 at weapons control. 2 at navigation. 1 at communications. 1 watching the door. Jake breathed slowly, centering himself. The rifle felt like an extension of his body. He calculated angles, estimated penetration through the transparent barrier, adjusted for the slight artificial gravity differential. The first shot was crucial. It would alert the entire ship, but it would also create chaos. Jake chose his target carefully. The communications officer. Cut their ability to call for help first. He squeezed the trigger. The plasma bolt punched through the observation blister's window, crossed the space to the bridge in a microsecond, and removed the communication officer's head. Before the body hit the floor, Jake had shifted targets. The weapons officers died next, 2 shots in rapid succession. The bridge erupted in chaos as raiders dove for cover. The one watching the door made the mistake of standing to look for the shooter. Jake's 4th shot took him center mass. 3 down in as many seconds. The captain and navigators scrambled for cover, shouting orders. Alarms blared throughout the ship. But Jake was already moving, displacing to avoid return fire. He dropped through a maintenance hatch, landing in a roll. The sniper rifle came up, and he put 2 shots through the bridge door's control panel, sealing it shut. Now the remaining bridge crew was trapped. His communication device crackled. Grax's unit picking up raider chatter. They were confused, panicking. Reports of prisoners free, armory compromised, engineering under attack. The Thraxians were doing their job. Jake moved through the ship like death itself. 3 raiders rushing toward the bridge met him in a corridor. The first 2 died before they knew they were in a fight. The third managed to raise his weapon before Jake's boot shattered his knee. A quick shot finished him. Room by room, deck by deck, Jake eliminated resistance. Not with berserker rage, but with cold precision. Every shot counted. Every movement had purpose. This wasn't combat. It was pest control. He reached the secondary command center where 5 raiders were trying to organize a counterattack. Jake pulled 2 shock grenades from his belt, courtesy of the armory. The explosions left the raiders stunned and disoriented. He walked in and methodically shot each one. His count was at 15. 7 left, including the 3 trapped on the bridge. Sarah's voice came over a stolen communicator. Cargo hold secure. All prisoners free. We have wounded. Copy. Dr. Herricks is setting up medical. Avoid deck 3. I haven't cleared it yet. Thompson. The children are safe. All of them. Good. Stay with them. This is almost over. The Thraxian brothers reported in next. Engineering secured. FTL disabled. Life support under their control. The ship was effectively crippled, going nowhere without their permission. 4 raiders left somewhere in the ship, plus the bridge crew. Jake reloaded his weapons and continued the hunt. He found 2 raiders trying to reach escape pods. The corporation that built those pods probably never imagined their products would become death traps, sealed by precise shots to the control mechanisms. The last 2 had barricaded themselves in the crew quarters. Jake could hear them inside, arguing about surrender. He didn't give them the chance to decide. The ventilation system in that section was separate from main life support. A few adjustments and sleep gas from the medical supplies flooded their refuge, which left the bridge. Jake returned to his observation position. The captain and 2 navigators were still there, working frantically on something. Trying to restore communications, probably, or trigger a distress beacon. Time to end this. But as Jake lined up his shot, something made him pause. The captain wasn't typing commands. He was entering a code sequence. Jake recognized. A self-destruct protocol. The raider would rather die than be captured. Jake shifted his aim. The shot took the captain through the shoulder, spinning him away from the console. The navigators raised their hands immediately. Surrendering, they had no interest in dying for their captain's pride. All raiders neutralized, Jake reported. Bridge secure pending entry. It took another hour to fully secure the ship and treat the wounded. 3 prisoners had died in the cargo hold before the rescue, executed by raiders making a point. 7 more were injured but would survive thanks to Dr. Herricks. Jake stood on the bridge, looking at the stars. They were deep in lawless space, but the ship was theirs now. The naval intelligence operative, fully conscious now, was already at the communications station. I can get us a galactic patrol escort, he said. My mission takes priority, but they'll ensure everyone gets home safe. Do it, Jake agreed. He was tired suddenly, the adrenaline fading. It had been a long time since he'd had to clear a ship single-handed. Well, mostly single-handed. Sarah approached him, still carrying a plasma rifle. 22 raiders. You took down most of them alone. I had help. We freed prisoners and watched doors. You. She gestured at the bloodstains and blast marks throughout the bridge. You did this. What kind of Marine were you? Jake set down the sniper rifle and pulled up a chair. The kind they send when talking fails. Scout sniper? She had done her research apparently. I thought that was mostly long-range stuff. This was different. Common misconception. We're trained for any range, any situation. Sometimes the mission requires a rifle and patience. Sometimes it requires clearing a ship room by room, whatever it takes to protect innocent people. The Thraxian brothers entered the bridge, their natural armor splattered with Green Raider blood. "The human fights like a ghost," Kellex announced to his brother in their language, not knowing Jake understood. "I have never seen such precise violence." "The stories about humans are true then," Velix replied. "They are persistence predators. Once they choose prey, death is certain." Jake pretended not to hear, but Sarah noticed his slight smile. "You speak Thraxian?" "Among others. Useful skill, in my line of work. Was, past tense. You're retired, remember?" Jake looked around the bridge, at the freed prisoners, at the children being reunited with their families, at the raiders who would never hurt anyone again. "Maybe," he said, "but old habits die hard." The naval intelligence operative looked up from his station. "Patrol ships inbound. ETA 4 hours. They're very interested in how a cargo hold full of civilians took down a full raider crew." "Tell them the truth," Jake suggested. "Pirates got sloppy. Prisoners got lucky." "That's not the truth." "Close enough." Jake stood, suddenly feeling every one of his 63 years. Enhanced genetics and military conditioning kept him capable, but the body still kept score. "I'm going to check on the wounded." As he left the bridge, he heard Sarah explaining to the others what a scout sniper really was. The awe in their voices made him uncomfortable. He wasn't a hero. He was just a man who had been trained to do necessary things. But as he entered the medical bay and saw the children drawing pictures to stay calm, saw families holding each other, saw beings of dozen species working together to help the wounded, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Purpose. He had retired because he was tired of violence, tired of being the solution to problems that should never have existed. But here, now, the violence had saved innocent lives. The skills he had hoped to leave behind had made the difference between freedom and slavery. Dr. Herricks looked up from treating a patient. "The human who freed us. They're calling you a hero. On the lower decks." "Just did what needed doing." "No." The doctor's 4 eyes focused on him intently. "You did what others could not. There is a difference." Jake helped move supplies, checked on patients, did the small things that needed doing after a crisis. Normal things. Human things. But he could feel the other freed prisoners watching him, whispering. The story was already growing in the telling. By the time the patrol ships arrived, the legend had taken shape. A human marine, arrested for a bar fight, had single-handedly taken down an entire raider crew to save 30 innocent beings. The details grew with each telling, the number of shots, the impossible angles, the way he had moved through the ship like Death's shadow. Jake gave his statement to the patrol officers, sticking to facts, downplaying his role, but the evidence was clear. Ballistic analysis. Security footage recovered from the ship's computers. Testimony from witnesses. One human had systematically eliminated 22 armed raiders. Gunnery Sergeant Thompson, the patrol captain, a stern Rigelian, reviewed his military records that had finally been accessed. 3 Medals of Valor. 7 Purple Hearts. 15 confirmed high-value target eliminations. Service in 6 major conflicts. "And you were arrested for a bar fight?" "I was drunk," Jake said simply. "Made some poor choices. The 3 Vornak traders you supposedly attacked have interesting backgrounds. Known connections to organized crime. The station security footage shows them threatening a human family before you intervened." Jake shrugged. "Like I said, poor choices." The patrol captain's expression might have been a smile. "The Galactic Council has authorized a reward for the capture of the Korthax raider cell. Substantial. It's yours by right. Split it among the prisoners. They've been through enough. And you? I just want to go home." But even as he said it, Jake wondered where that was now. Earth? The colonies? Somewhere new? The naval intelligence operative approached as the patrol captain left. "My agency could use someone like you. Lot of problems in the frontier sectors. Good people getting hurt because no one's there to help. I'm retired. So you keep saying. The operative handed him a data chip. In case you get bored. We pay well. And you'd be saving lives. Jake pocketed the chip without looking at it. Maybe later, maybe never, but maybe. The freed prisoners were transferred to the patrol ships for the journey back to civilization. Jake found himself assigned to quarters far nicer than a rested bar brawler deserved. No one questioned it. Word had spread through the patrol fleet. This was the human who had taken down the Korthax. Sarah found him on the observation deck, watching stars streak by in hyperspace. So what now? Back to retirement? Haven't decided. The children drew you pictures. She handed him a stack of crude drawings. Stick figures with guns. Fighting monsters. Saving smaller stick figures. You're their hero. I'm nobody's hero. Just a man who knew how to fight. That's what heroes always say. Sarah leaned against the railing beside him. That agency guy made you an offer? He did. You going to take it? Jake looked at the drawings. In one, a small Altarian child had drawn him standing between prisoners and raiders. The proportions were all wrong. The details childish. But the intent was clear. Protector. Guardian. Hero. Maybe, he admitted. There are a lot of stations out there. Lot of innocent people who might need help. Lot of bad guys who need shooting. That too. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere behind them, families slept peacefully, no longer fearing slavery or death. Somewhere ahead, other families might need the same protection. Jake Thompson, former gunnery sergeant, scout sniper, reluctant hero, made his decision. Retirement could wait. There was work to be done. When we get back, he said finally, I'll make some calls. See what's out there. Sarah smiled. Good. The galaxy needs more humans like you. No, Jake corrected gently. It needs more people. Period. Human. Thraxian. Altarian. Doesn't matter. People willing to stand up when it counts. But it doesn't hurt to be a highly trained killing machine when you do? Despite himself, Jake smiled. No. That doesn't hurt. No. The ship continued through hyperspace, carrying them back to safety. But for Jake Thompson, the journey was just beginning. He had remembered something important in that cargo hold, facing down armed raiders to protect strangers. This was who he was. Not just a soldier, not just a sniper, a guardian, a protector, a man who stood between the innocent and those who would harm them, and there was still plenty of work to be done. 6 months after the Korthax incident, Jake Thompson sat in a crowded bar on Titan Station, nursing a beer and reading intelligence reports on his secure datapad. The naval intelligence job had been everything the operative promised. Good pay, meaningful work, and plenty of action. Jake had already shut down 3 slaver operations and rescued over 200 beings. But tonight wasn't about work. Tonight was about blending in, being invisible. Just another human among thousands on the massive trading station. His target would arrive tomorrow. Tonight, he could relax. You're Thompson. Jake didn't look up from his pad. Common name. Lots of Thompsons out there. The speaker sat down uninvited. A Craxian enforcement officer. 4 arms. Compound eyes. Mandibles clicking nervously. Jake recognized the species but not the individual. You're the Thompson, the one who killed the Korthax raiders. You've got the wrong guy, friend. I'm just a freight pilot. Jake's cover identity was solid, backed by the best forgers intelligence could provide. My cousin was on Nexus 7, Security Division. He was one of the officers who arrested you. Now Jake looked up, hand instinctively moving toward the concealed weapon under his jacket. But the Craxian raised all 4 hands peacefully. I'm not here for trouble. I wanted to thank you. Jake relaxed fractionally. Thank me for what? My cousin, Zektar. He was young, stupid. Thought humans were just troublemakers. After the raid, when he learned what you did, it changed him. He resigned from security. Joined the Galactic Patrol. Said if one drunk human could save 30 people, maybe he should try harder. Good for him. Jake returned to his pad, hoping the conversation was over. But the Craxian wasn't done. He also told me what really happened in that bar. The Vornax you fought. They were shaking down human families for protection money. You asked them politely to stop. They attacked you. Your cousin has an active imagination. Station security recordings confirm it. You could have killed them easily but held back. Let yourself get arrested, rather than seriously hurt them. Why? Jake finally set down the pad. What do you want? To understand. You had every right to defend yourself, but you chose jail. Then you saved people who watched you get arrested without helping. Why? Because that's what separates us from the Raiders. Jake took a sip of beer. Power without restraint is just tyranny. Those Vornox were scumbags. But they didn't deserve to die. The Raiders? Different story. The Craxians' mandibles moved in what might have been appreciation. My cousin says humans are complicated. Warriors who choose not to fight. Predators who protect prey. We're just people trying to get by. No, you're something more. The Craxian stood. There's going to be trouble here. Tomorrow. The Syndicate is moving something big through the station. Everyone knows, but no one will act. Jake kept his expression neutral. This aligned with his intelligence, but he couldn't reveal that. Not my problem, isn't it? The Craxian left without another word. Jake finished his beer and returned to his quarters. The Craxian's information was good. The Votar Syndicate was indeed moving something through Titan Station. Not drugs or weapons, but people. 300 refugees from the border wars, sold to mining consortiums. Jake's mission was to stop it. He spent the night reviewing plans and checking equipment. The new rifle from Intelligence was a beauty. Adaptive camouflage. Variable output. Integrated targeting system. His armor was civilian-grade on the outside but military beneath. Various gadgets and weapons were hidden throughout his quarters, ready for rapid deployment. At 0600, Jake was in position. The Syndicate would move their cargo through the lower docking rings. Using maintenance tunnels to avoid security, Jake had scouted 3 probable routes and placed surveillance devices on each. Now he waited on a catwalk above the main junction, invisible in the shadows. The first sign of trouble came from an unexpected source. Zektar's cousin, the Craxian from the bar, appeared in the tunnel below with 2 other enforcement officers. They were checking access panels, following the same logic Jake had. Amateurs. They'd spook the Syndicate and ruin everything. Jake considered his options. He could warn them off, but that would blow his cover. He could let them bumble around and hope they didn't interfere. Or, he activated his armor's stealth mode and dropped silently behind them. 3 quick nerve strikes, and the officers were unconscious. He dragged them into a maintenance closet and sealed the door. They'd wake up with headaches, but otherwise unharmed. Sorry about that, he muttered, returning to his perch. 20 minutes later, his patience paid off. The Syndicate team appeared, 15 heavily armed Votar, escorting a line of terrified refugees. The beings were collared and chained, shuffling forward in defeat. Children clutched parents. Elderly beings struggled to keep pace. Jake counted hostiles, noted positions, identified the leader. The Votar were professionals, maintaining good spacing and overlapping fields of fire. This wouldn't be like the Raiders. These were true soldiers. But Jake had advantages. Surprise. Superior position. And most importantly, they thought they were safe. The tunnels were supposed to be clear. He activated his rifle's targeting system, designating priorities. Leaders first, then heavy weapons, then the rest. The AI calculated firing solutions, accounting for movement and cover. Jake breathed slowly, finding his center. The first shot took the leader through the head. The second eliminated their heavy weapons specialist before anyone could react. By the third shot, the Votar were scattering, seeking cover, shouting orders. Jake displaced immediately, moving along the catwalk as return fire sparked off metal. He fired on the move, each shot finding its mark. 4 down, 5, 6. The Syndicate soldiers were good. but they were fighting a ghost. Jake's adaptive camouflage made him nearly invisible in the industrial shadows. His position gave him perfect sightlines while they could only shoot at muzzle flashes. 7 down. 8. One Votar grabbed a refugee child, using her as a shield. Jake's scope found a 16-millimeter gap between the child's ear and her captor's eye. The shot threaded perfectly through that gap. The child screamed but was unharmed as her captor fell. 9 down. 10. The remaining Votar tried to retreat, dragging refugees with them. Jake couldn't allow that. He dropped from the catwalk, landing among them like a thunderbolt. The rifle became a club, then a spear as he drew his combat blade. Close-quarters combat was different from sniping but no less precise. Jake moved through the Votar like a whirlwind, using their numbers against them. They couldn't shoot without hitting each other. He could strike with impunity. 11. 12. One Votar managed to get his weapon up. Jake threw the combat blade, taking him in the throat. Another tried to run. A quick shot from the rifle dropped him. 14. The last Votar threw down his weapon, raising his hands. "I surrender. Mercy." Jake approached cautiously. Surrendering enemies could be the most dangerous. But the Votar seemed genuinely beaten, fear evident in all 6 of his eyes. "Unlock the collars," Jake ordered. The Votar fumbled for the control unit, releasing the refugees. They stood uncertainly, not quite believing they were free. "Go," Jake told them. "Upper levels, find station security. Tell them what happened. Go now." The refugees fled, some stopping to touch Jake's armor in gratitude. Soon, only Jake and the surrendered Votar remained among the bodies. "You're going to kill me anyway," the Votar said. "Just make it quick." "I don't execute prisoners," Jake replied. "But your friends might." He activated an emergency beacon on the Votar's armor. The Syndicate would come to investigate, find their operation blown, their soldiers dead. They'd assume the survivor talked. "They'll think you betrayed them," Jake explained. "You should run, far and fast." The Votar's eyes widened in understanding. Death would have been mercier than what the Syndicate did to traitors. He ran without another word. Jake collected his surveillance devices and began the careful process of extracting. The enforcement officers would wake soon. Station security would investigate. His work here was done. But as he reached the upper levels, alarms began blaring. Not the standard security alert, something worse. Combat warnings. The station was under attack. Jake found a security terminal and accessed the external feeds. A massive ship had emerged from hyperspace, weapons powered. The configuration was familiar. Korthax design, but larger, more dangerous. A mothership. The Korthax announcement played on all channels. "I am War Chief Krogan of the Korthax hegemony. You harbor the human who destroyed our raiding pack. Surrender him or face destruction." Jake watched the station's defenses scramble. Titan Station had good shields and weapons, but the Korthax mothership was built for sieges. This could get ugly. He made his way to the command center, using his intelligence credentials to bypass security. The station commander, a harried Centaurian, was coordinating defenses. "We can hold them off," the commander was saying, "but not forever. Patrol reinforcements are hours away." "They want me," Jake announced, walking into the command center. Security personnel raised weapons, but the commander waved them down. "You're him? The one from the Nexus 7 incident?" Jake Thompson, former Marine, current intelligence operative. He showed his real credentials. "This is my fault. I should have known they'd want payback. You saved 30 people, and now thousands are at risk because of it." Jake studied the tactical display. The Korthax were positioning for bombardment. "Let me talk to them. Are you insane? They'll kill you." "Maybe. But they'll destroy the station, trying to get to me anyway. This way, at least there's a chance." The commander hesitated, then nodded. "Channels open." Jake stepped to the communication console. "War Chief Krogan. This is Jake Thompson. I'm the one you want." The screen filled with the scarred visage of a Korthax warrior. Bigger than the raiders, covered in ceremonial armor that spoke of dozens of victories. Human! You killed my son! Jake remembered the raid leader, the one who chose self-destruct over capture. He was a slaver and a murderer. He was Korthax. You are prey that forgot its place. Surrender and I will spare the station. I need guarantees. Safe passage for all station inhabitants. No retaliation. You dare make demands? I dare. Jake kept his voice steady. You want me? Fine. But these people are under my protection. You harm them, and I'll make what happened to your son look merciful. The war chief's reptilian features contorted with rage. You threaten me, human? I promise you. Touch this station after I surrender, and every human in the galaxy will know the Korthax have no honor. We'll hunt your species to extinction. Start with you. It was a bluff, mostly. But the war chief didn't know that. The mystique of human persistence predators had grown since the Raider incident. Stories of humans tracking prey across star systems, never stopping, never tiring. 1 hour, Krogan snarled. Present yourself at Docking Bay 7. Alone. Unarmed. The channel closed. Jake turned to find the entire command center staring at him. You can't seriously be considering this, the commander said. I've got an hour to come up with something better. Jake pulled out his secure communicator. In the meantime, I need to make some calls. He stepped aside and contacted his handler at Naval Intelligence. The response was immediate. Thompson. We're tracking the situation. Patrol forces are en route but won't arrive in time. Do not. Repeat. Do not surrender yourself. If I don't, they'll destroy the station. That's not your problem. It is now. Jake cut the connection and made another call. This one took longer to connect, routing through secure relays to a location he'd memorized but never used. Overwatch Actual, a voice answered. Authentication? Jake recited a code he'd been given years ago. Ghost Protocol. Requesting priority consultation. I code. A pause. Stand by. The next voice was older, weathered by command. Thompson. I wondered when you'd use this line. General, I have a situation, Jake explained quickly. The Korthax want their pound of flesh. The general mused. Can't say I blame them, but can't let them have you either. You're too valuable. Sir, the station. We'll be fine. Help is closer than anyone thinks. You just need to buy time. How much time? 47 minutes. Think you can keep a war chief talking that long? I'll manage. Good man. And Jake? When this is over, we need to discuss your future. This lone wolf act is getting old. The connection ended. Jake checked his weapons, made a few preparations, then headed for Docking Bay 7. He wasn't going unarmed despite the agreement. Honor was for people who didn't have thousands of lives depending on them. The docking bay was cleared of civilians, filled instead with nervous security personnel. They watched Jake approach with a mixture of awe and pity. Everyone knew what the Korthax did to prisoners. A shuttle descended from the mothership, scarred and weapon-heavy. The ramp lowered, revealing a squad of Korthax warriors. Each was larger than the raiders Jake had faced, true soldiers rather than criminals. War Chief Krogan emerged last, having to duck through the human-sized hatch. Up close, he was even more imposing. 8 feet of muscle, scale, and barely contained violence. Human, you came. I said I would. Your weapons. Jake slowly removed his visible weapons, setting them aside. The hidden ones stayed where they were. A warrior always had options. You killed 22 Korthax, Krogan said, circling Jake like a predator. My son among them. They were slavers. They chose their fate. They were providing for their clan. The strong take from the weak. It is the way, not the human way. Krogan's tail lashed. Yes. I have studied your species since the incident. Persistence predators. You chase prey until it collapses from exhaustion. No other predator hunts this way. Efficient. Horrifying. Do you know what it's like to be hunted by a human? Thompson? My people tell stories now. of humans who never stop, never tire, always following. You've become our nightmare. Good, the war chief roared, backhanding Jake with enough force to send him flying. Jake rolled with the impact, coming up ready. His hidden knife was tempting, but not yet. Buy time. 40 minutes left. You dare mock me? Krogan advanced, claws extended. I dare speak truth. Jake wiped blood from his mouth. Your son got sloppy. He thought humans were easy prey. He learned otherwise. Another blow, this one caught by Jake's raised arms. The impact still drove him to his knees. The watching Korthak's warriors chittered appreciation. You will beg before the end, Krogan promised. Doubtful. This time Jake ducked the swing, using the war chief's momentum against him. A quick strike to the knee made the giant stumble. Jake danced back, staying out of reach. You fight like prey, Krogan snarled. Dodging, running. I fight to win. Your son didn't understand that either. They circled each other. Jake kept talking, kept the war chief focused on him rather than the time. He told the story of the raid, emphasizing his son's cowardice, his willingness to kill himself rather than face justice. 30 minutes. His ribs ached from the hits he'd taken, but Krogan was getting angrier, sloppier. He died badly, Jake said, dodging another swing, whimpering, begging. That was a lie. The raid leader had died trying to take everyone with him. But it had the desired effect. Krogan charged blindly. All technique forgotten in his rage, Jake sidestepped and finally drew his hidden knife, slashing across the war chief's hamstring. The huge alien crashed down, roaring in pain and fury. Like father, like son, Jake observed, backing away as Korthak's warriors raised their weapons. Wait! Krogan struggled to his feet, green blood flowing from the wound. This is my fight. My honor. 20 minutes. The war chief was limping now but far from finished. He pulled his own blade, longer than Jake's arm. You think you've won, human? Even if you kill me, my ship will glass this station. Maybe. Jake shifted his stance, knife ready. But you'll still be dead. They met in a clash of blades. Krogan had reach and strength, but Jake had speed and decades of training. He gave ground slowly, using the bay's geometry to his advantage. 15 minutes. A lucky strike opened a gash on Jake's arm. He switched the knife to his other hand, without missing a beat. Another exchange left both fighters bleeding from multiple wounds. You're good, Krogan admitted, breathing heavily. You're not bad yourself, for a dead lizard walking. 10 minutes. Where was the general's help? As if in answer, alarms began blaring. Not from the station, but from the Korthak's mothership. Krogan's warriors were shouting, receiving reports. What is this? The war chief demanded. Jake smiled through the blood. That would be the United Earth Defense Fleet's 3rd Battalion. We call them the Ghostmakers. On the tactical displays, ships were emerging from stealth positions all around the station. Not just any ships, human warships, designed for one thing, killing. Impossible, Krogan breathed. We scanned. Human stealth technology. We learned from the best predators in the galaxy. Ourselves. Jake lowered his knife. Your ship is surrounded. War Chief. This fight is over. We are Korthaks. We do not surrender. Then you die. All of you. And for what? Because your slaver son got himself killed? The human fleet commander's voice echoed through the bay. Korthak's vessel. You are targeted by 47 weapon systems. Power down or be destroyed. You have 10 seconds to comply. Krogan looked between Jake and the displays showing his surrounded ship. His warriors waited for orders, ready to die at his command. The seconds ticked by. 5 seconds. Wait. Krogan raised his hand. To his warriors, he spoke in their language. Jake understood enough to know he was ordering them to stand down. Wise choice, Jake said. This is not over. Human. Blood demands blood. Then face me properly. Single combat, witnessed by both our peoples. If you win, the blood debt is settled. If I win, the Korthax leave human space forever. It was a gamble, but Jake could see the war chief considering. Personal honor against strategic withdrawal. You would risk this? I already have. Unless you're afraid of one injured human? That did it. Krogan roared acceptance. Witnessed. Let both fleets observe. What followed was 20 minutes of brutal combat broadcast to every ship and screen. Jake fought with everything he had: marine training, intelligence tricks, and sheer determination. Krogan was a mountain of scales and fury, refusing to fall despite accumulating wounds. But mountains could be worn down. Jake's persistence predator heritage showed as he kept moving, kept striking, kept surviving long past when he should have collapsed. Every time Krogan thought he had won, the human found another reserve of strength. Finally, inevitably, the war chief fell to his knees. Jake's knife found the gap in his scales, pressed against the vital artery. Yield, Jake gasped through broken ribs and bloodied lips. I yield. The words clearly cost Krogan everything. The blood debt is paid. Korthax will withdraw. Jake stepped back, letting the war chief live. Around them, both fleets watched in silence. The human had won, but barely. Both warriors had earned respect. Why? Krogan asked as his warriors helped him stand. Why spare me? Because someone has to tell your people what happens when they hunt humans. We hunt back. Jake accepted support from arriving medics. And we never miss. The Korthax withdrew as promised. The story spread across the galaxy within days. A human had faced down a war chief and won. The footage of the fight became required viewing at military academies of dozen species. Jake spent 3 weeks in the medical bay, recovering from injuries that would have killed most beings. His handler visited on the 2nd week. That was reckless, even for you. It worked. This time, the general wants to see you when you're mobile. Something about a new position. I'm happy where I am. No, you're not. The handler set down a datapad. 300 refugees saved. A war chief defeated. A potential war averted. You're beyond fieldwork now, Thompson. Time to think bigger. Jake read the pad. The Defense Council was creating a new unit. Mixed species, rapid response, specifically to handle situations like the Korthax incident before they escalated. They wanted Jake to lead it. I'm a shooter, not a commander. You're a warrior who knows when not to fight. That's what we need. Sarah Chen visited the next day, now wearing lieutenant insignia. Heard you got yourself shot up again. Occupational hazard. Also heard about the new unit. You taking it? Haven't decided. You should. The galaxy's changing. More humans in space means more misunderstandings. More chances for things to go wrong. We need someone who can bridge the gap. I'm not a diplomat. No, but you understand strength and honor. Out here, that's what matters. She had a point. Jake had spent his career eliminating threats. Maybe it was time to try preventing them instead. The Thraxian brothers visited too, now wearing patrol uniforms. The human who taught us efficiency. Kellex clicked. We came to pay respects, and to ask a favor, Velix added. We want to join your new unit. I haven't accepted yet. You will. A warrior like you cannot sit idle while others are in danger. Everyone seemed certain, except Jake himself. But as he lay in the medical bay, watching news feeds of increasing tensions between human colonies and various species, he realized they were right. Humanity was spreading across the galaxy, bringing their unique nature with them. Persistence predators who could also be protectors. Warriors who chose peace when possible. They needed guides, examples, bridges between what humanity was and what others expected. When the general finally visited, Jake was ready with his answer. I'll take the position, but we do things my way. Wouldn't have it any other way. The general smiled. Welcome to the Interspecies Crisis Response Unit. Commander Thompson. The general smiled. Commander Thompson, just Jake. Ranks make me nervous. Too bad. You're a commander now. Deal with it. Over the following months, Jake built his unit. Sarah Chen became his second in command. The Thraxian brothers led the assault team. Dr. Herricks ran medical. Even Zix, the Gorvak intelligence specialist from the slave ship, joined as technical support. Their first mission came sooner than expected. Human colonists had accidentally violated a sacred Altarian burial ground. The Altarians demanded blood justice. Traditional diplomacy was failing. Jake stood before the Altarian Elder Council, his team behind him. He wore his dress uniform for the first time in years, medals gleaming. The Thraxians had coached him on their customs. Honored elders, Jake began, removing his sidearm and placing it on the ground. A sign of peaceful intent. I am Jake Thompson, warrior of Earth, speaker for humanity. We have wronged you, through ignorance, not malice. How may we restore balance? The eldest, ancient beyond measure, studied him. You are the human from the stories. The one who hunts slavers. Who defeated a war chief in single combat. I am. Yet you come before us empty-handed, seeking peace? The greatest victory is the battle not fought. My people are new to the stars. We make mistakes, but we also learn. Teach us your ways. And this will never happen again. It took hours of negotiation, but they found a solution. The humans would relocate their colony and tend the burial grounds for a generation. A heartbeat for Altarians, but meaningful commitment from short-lived humans. Both sides saved face. No blood was shed. As they departed, the eldest called Jake back. You are not what we expected from human warriors. What did you expect? Conquerors. Killers. Instead, we find teachers. Protectors. It is interesting. That became the pattern. Jake's unit responded to crisis after crisis, usually arriving just before violence erupted. Sometimes they fought. Pirates and slavers didn't respond to negotiation. But more often, they found ways to bridge misunderstandings. Jake Thompson, the drunk human who had been arrested for a bar fight, became something unexpected. A symbol of what humanity could be in the galaxy. Not just persistent predators, but persistent protectors. Not just warriors, but peacemakers who carried very big sticks. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of possibilities. And somewhere among the stars, a human sniper turned commander continued his mission, standing between the innocent and those who would harm them, teaching others to do the same. The war was over. The real work had just begun.